4. Spencer walks the plank. Honey, you're not supposed to eat the mussels with your hands. It's not polite. Spencer Hastings looked across the table at her mother, Veronica, who nervously ran her hands through her perfectly highlighted ash blonde hair. Sorry, Spencer said, picking up the ridiculously small mussel-eating fork. I really don't think Melissa should be living in the townhouse with all that dust, Mrs. Hastings said to her husband, ignoring Spencer's apology. Peter Hastings rolled his neck around. When he wasn't practicing law, he was furiously cycling all the back roads of Rosewood in tight, colorful spandex shirts and bike pants, shaking his fist at speeding cars. All that cycling gave him chronically sore shoulders. All that hammering. I don't know how she'll get any studying done, Mrs. Hastings went on. Spencer and her parents were sitting at Mashula, a restaurant aboard a clipper ship in the Philadelphia harbor, waiting for Spencer's sister Melissa to meet them for dinner. It was a big celebratory dinner because Melissa had graduated from UPenn undergrad a year early and had gotten into Penn's Wharton School of Business. The downtown Philly townhouse was being renovated as a gift from their parents to Melissa. In just 2 days, Spencer was starting her junior year at Rosewood and would have to surrender herself to this year's jam-packed schedule: 5 APs, leadership training, charity drive organizing, yearbook editing, drama tryouts, hockey practice, and sending in summer program applications ASAP, since everyone knew that the best way to get into an Ivy was to get into one of their pre-college summer camps. But there was one thing Spencer had to look forward to this year: moving into the converted barn that sat at the back of her family's property. According to her parents, it was the perfect way to prepare for college. Just look how well it worked for Melissa. Barf. But Spencer was happy to follow in her sister's footsteps in this case, since they led out to tranquil, light-flooded guest house where Spencer would escape her parents and their constantly barking labradoodles. The sisters had a quiet yet long-standing rivalry, and Spencer was always losing. Spencer had won the Presidential Physical Fitness Award 4 times in elementary school. Melissa had won it 5. Spencer got second place in the 7th grade Geography B. Melissa got first. Spencer was on the yearbook staff in all of the school plays and was taking 5 AP classes this year. Melissa did all those things her junior year, plus worked at their mother's horse farm and trained for the Philadelphia Marathon for leukemia research. No matter how high Spencer's GPA was, or how many extracurriculars she smashed into her schedule, she never quite reached Melissa's level of perfection. Spencer picked up another mussel with her finger and plopped it into her mouth. Her dad loves this restaurant, with its dark wood paneling, thick oriental rugs, and the heavy smell of butter, red wine, and salty air. Sitting among the mast and sails, it felt like you would jump right overboard into the harbor. Spencer gazed out across the Delaware River to the big, bubbly aquarium in Camden, New Jersey. A giant party boat decorated with Christmas lights floated past them. Someone shot a yellow firework off the front deck. That boat was having way more fun than this one was having. What's Melissa's friend's name again? Her mother murmured. I think it's Wren, Spencer said. In her head she added, as in scrawny bird. She told me he's studying to be a doctor, her mother swooned, at UPenn. Of course he is, Spencer quietly sing-songed. She bit down hard on a piece of mussel shell and winced. Melissa was bringing her boyfriend of 2 months to dinner. The family hadn't met him yet. He's been away visiting family or something. But Melissa's boyfriends were all the same. Textbook handsome, well-mannered, played golf. Melissa didn't have an ounce of creativity in her body and clearly looked for the same predictability in her boyfriends. Mom! A familiar voice called from behind Spencer. Melissa swooped on the other side of the table and gave each of her parents a huge kiss. Her look hadn't changed since high school. Her ash blonde hair was cut blunty to her chin, she wore no makeup except for a little foundation, and she wore a dowdy square-necked yellow dress, a pearl-buttoned pink cardigan, and semi-cute kitten heel shoes. Darling, her mother cried. Mom, Dad, here's Wren. Melissa pulled in someone next to her. Spencer tried to keep her mouth from dropping open. There was nothing scrawny, bird-like, or textbook about Wren. He was tall and lanky and wore a beautifully cut Thomas pink shirt. His black hair was cut in a long, shaggy, messy style. He had beautiful skin, high-cheeked bones, and almond-shaped eyes. Wren shook her parents' hands and sat down at the table. Melissa asked her mom a question about where to have the plumber's bill sent. While Spencer waited to be introduced, Wren pretended to be really interested in an oversized wine glass. "I'm Spencer," she finally said. She wondered if her breath smelled like mussels. "The other daughter," Spencer nodded towards the other side of the table. "The one they keep in the basement." "Oh," Wren grinned. "Cool." Was that a British accent she heard? Was that a British accent she heard? "Isn't it strange they haven't asked you a single thing about yourself?" Spencer gestured at her parents. Now they were talking about contractors and the best wood to use for a living room floor. Wren shrugged and then whispered, "Kinda." He winked. Suddenly, Melissa grabbed Wren's hand. "Oh, I see you've met her," she cooed. "Yeah," he smiled. "You didn't tell me you had a sister." "Of course she hasn't." "So, Melissa," Mrs. Hastings said, "Daddy and I were talking about where you might be staying while all the renovations are happening, and I just thought something. Why not come back to Rosewood to live with us for a few months? You can commute to Penn. You know how easy it is." Melissa wrinkled her nose. Please say no," Spencer willed. Well, Melissa adjusted the strap of her yellow dress. The more Spencer stared at it, the more the color made Melissa look like she had the flu. Melissa glanced at Wren. "The thing is, Wren and I are going to be moving into the townhouse together." "Oh!" Her mother smiled at both of them. "Well, I suppose Wren could stay with us too. What do you think, Peter?" Spencer had to clutch her boobs to keep her heart from exploding out of her chest. They were moving in together? Her sister really had some balls. She could just imagine what would happen if she dropped a bomb like that. Mom would really make Spencer live in the basement. Or maybe in the stable. She could set up shop next to the horse's companion goat. "Well, I suppose that's all right," her father said. "Unbelievable." "It'd certainly be quiet. Mom's in the stable most of the day, and of course Spencer will be in school." "You're in school?" Wren asked. "Where?" "She's in high school," Melissa butted in. She stared long at Spencer, as if she was sizing her up. From Spencer's tight ecru lacrosse tennis dress to her long and dark blonde wavy hair to her 2-carat diamond earrings. "Same high school I went to. I never asked, Spence. Are you president of the class this year?" "VP," Spencer mumbled. There was no way Melissa hadn't already known that. "Oh, aren't you so happy it worked out that way?" Melissa asked. "No," Spencer said flatly. She'd run for the spot last spring, but she had been beaten out and had to take VP spot. She hated losing at anything. Melissa shook her head. "You don't understand, Spence. It's so much work. When I was president, I barely had time for anything else." "You do have quite a few activities, Spencer," Mrs. Hastings murmured. "There's yearbook and all those hockey games." "Besides, Spence, you'll take over if President, dies." Melissa winked at her as if they were making a joke, which they weren't. Melissa turned back to her parents. "Mom, I just got the best idea. What if Wren and I stayed in the barn? Then we'd be out of your hair." Spencer felt as if someone had just kicked her in the ovaries. The barn? Mrs. Hastings put her French manicured finger to her perfectly lipsticked mouth. She started. She turned tentatively to Spencer. "Would you be able to wait a few months, honey? Then the barn will be all yours." "Oh!" Melissa laid down her fork. "I didn't know you were going to move in there, Spence. I don't want to cause problems." "It's fine," Spencer interrupted, grabbing her glass of ice water and taking a hearty swallow. She willed herself not to throw a tantrum in front of her parents and perfect Melissa. "I can wait." "Seriously?" Melissa asked. "That's so sweet of you." Her mother pressed her cold, thin hand against Spencer and beamed. "I knew you'd understand." "Can you excuse me?" Spencer dizzily shoved her seat back in the table and stood up. "I'll be right back." She walked across the boat's wooden floor, down the carpeted main stairs and out the front entrance. She needed to get to dry land. Out on the Penn's landing walkway, the Philadelphia skyline glittered. Spencer sat down on a bench and breathed yoga fire breaths. Then she pulled out her wallet and started to organize her money. She turned all the 1s, 5s, and 20s to the same direction and alphabetized them according to the long letter number combinations printed in green in the corners. Doing this always made her feel better. When she finished, she gazed up at the ship's dining deck. Her parents faced the river, so they couldn't see her. She dug through her tan Hogan bag for her emergency pack of Marlboros and hit one. She took a drag after angry drag. Stealing the barn was evil enough, but doing it in such a polite way was just Melissa's style. Melissa had always been outwardly nice, but inwardly horrid, and no one could see it but Spencer. She'd gotten revenge on Melissa just once a few weeks ago, before the end of 7th grade. One evening, Melissa and her then-boyfriend Ian Thomas were studying for finals. When Ian left, Spencer cornered him outside by his SUV, which he'd parked behind her family's row of pine trees. She merely wanted to flirt. Ian was wasting all his hotness on her plain vanilla goody-two-shoes sister, so she gave Ian a peck goodbye on the cheek. But when he pressed her against his passenger door, she didn't try to run away. They only stopped kissing when his car alarm started to blare. When Spencer told Allison about it, Allie said it was a pretty foul thing to do, and that she should confess to Melissa. Spencer suspected Allie was just pissed because they had been running competition all year over who could hook up with the most older boys, and kissing Ian put Spencer in the lead. Spencer inhaled sharply. She hated being reminded of that period of her life. But the De Laurentiis' house was right next door to hers, and one of Allie's bedroom windows faced one of Spencer's. It was like Allie haunted her 24/7. All Spencer had to do was look out her window, and there was 7th grade Allie, hanging her JV hockey uniform right where Spencer could see it, or strolling around her bedroom gossiping into her cell phone. Spencer wanted to think she'd changed a lot since 7th grade. They'd all been so mean, especially Allison, but not just Allison. And the worst memory of all was the Jenna thing. Thinking of that made Spencer feel so horrible, and she wished she could erase it from her brain, like they did in that movie Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. You shouldn't be smoking, you know. She turned and there was Wren, standing right next to her. Spencer looked at him surprised. What are you doing down here? He opened and closed his hands at each other like mouths yapping. And I have a page. He pulled out a BlackBerry. Oh, Spencer said. Is that from the hospital? I hear you're a big-time doctor. Well, no, actually. I'm a first-year med student, Wren said, and then pointed at her cigarette. You mind if I have a bit of that? Spencer twisted the corners of her mouth wryly. You just told me not to smoke, she said, handing it over to him. Yeah, well. Wren took a deep drag off the cigarette. You all right? Whatever, Spencer wasn't about to talk about things over her sister's new live-in boyfriend who'd just stolen her barn. So where are you from? North London. My dad's Korean, though. He moved to England to go to Oxford and ended up staying. Everyone asks. Oh, I wasn't going to, Spencer replied, even though she had thought about it. How do you and my sister meet? At Starbucks, he answered. She was in line in front of me. Oh, Spencer said, how incredibly lame. She was buying a latte, Wren added, kicking at the stone curb. That's nice, Spencer fiddled with the pack of cigarettes. That was a few months ago. He raggedly took another drag, his hands shaking a little and his eyes darting around. I fancied her before she got the townhouse. Right, Spencer said, realizing he seemed a little nervous. Maybe he was tense about meeting her parents. Or was it moving in with Melissa that had him on edge? If Spencer were a boy and had to move in with Melissa, she'd throw herself off Masulu's crow's nest into the Delaware River. He handed the cigarette back to her. I hope it's okay that I'm going to be staying in your house. Yeah, whatever. Wren licked his lips. Maybe I can get you to kick your smoking addiction. Spencer stiffened. I'm not addicted. Sure you're not, Wren answered, smiling. Spencer shook her head empathetically. No, I'd never let that happen. And it was true. Spencer hated feeling out of control. Wren smiled. Well, you certainly sound like you know what you're doing. I do. Are you that way with everything? Wren asked, his eyes shining. There was something about the light, teasing way he said it that made Spencer pause. Were they flirting? They stared at each other for a few seconds, until a big group of people came swishing out of the boat onto the street. Spencer lowered her eyes. So, do you think it's time we go back? Wren asked. Spencer hesitated and looked at the streets, full of taxis, ready to take her wherever she wanted. She almost wanted to ask Wren to get in one of the cabs with her and go to the baseball game at Citizens Bank Park, where they could eat hot dogs, yell at players, and count how many strikeouts the Phillies starting pitcher racked up. She could use her dad's box seats, they mostly just went to waste anyway, and she bet Wren would be into that. Why go back, when her family was just going to continue to ignore them? A cab paused at the light just a few feet away. She looked at it, then back at Wren. But no, that was wrong. And who would fill the vice president post if he died? And she was murdered by her own sister. After you, Spencer said, and held the door open for him so they could climb back aboard.